Hi everyone. Today I will discuss about debt and try to understand whether it is an invisible engine or a trap for individuals and economies. Well, imagine a world where no one borrows, no home loans, no EMIs, no credit cards, no government borrowing. Only one rule, you spend only what you earn. Sounds peaceful, maybe. Without debt, considering the rising cost, homes, cars, education, electronics, everything becomes harder to afford. People buy only when they have full cash. Home ownership will fall sharply. Car ownership will drop. Higher education will become a privilege for only wealthy. Life may resemble the 1950s, simple, slow, modest, savings driven. Consumption will shrink, impulse buying will collapse, and repairing will become more common than replacing. Businesses will grow slowly because there will be no startup loans, no expansion loans, no venture funding. The world's biggest companies would take decades to emerge. Innovation will slow, job creation will slow, and economies will become more sluggish. Without borrowing, government cannot rapidly build highways, schools, railways, ports, and infrastructure. Everything becomes pay as you go. Taxes may rise, projects get delayed for years, social welfare will become limited. The world will become more stable, but also far slower. In the last 2 decades, public debt has risen sharply across almost every major economy for funding infrastructure, startup, technology, social spending, etc. Just have a look at the table. America's debt stood at around 60% of GDP in mid 2000, and today it has doubled to nearly 120% of GDP. And because the US GDP per capita has more than doubled in nominal terms, debt per person has effectively increased 2 or 3 times. The biggest debt portion is interest payment of $1 trillion per annum, which is higher than the defense budget. Today, Japan's debt has climbed to about 235% of GDP, the highest among major economies, but they have kept household debts at a manageable level, while public debt has been rising. France has moved from around 64% of GDP to nearly 115 to 120% today. Italy, already at 110, now stands in the mid 130 range. The United Kingdom has gone from 47% to almost 100%, roughly doubling its debt burden. Germany is the only major exception. Its debt was around 65%, and after some fluctuations, it remains close to that level now. China's rise has come with a sharp rise in borrowings. From around 40% of GDP in mid 2000, Chinese government debt has surged to 90 to 100% in the last 2 decades. India has hovered around 70 to 80% band for much of the last 2 decades, except during COVID, when the number went upward and total government debt even today stands around 80% of the GDP. Brazil has seen a similar climb from around 60% to nearly 90% today, and Canada stands at roughly 111% of GDP, placing it among the higher debt advanced economies. The conclusion is clear. Across most large economies, public debt has doubled over a 20-year period. So has debt per capita. When we talk about debt, we usually think of government borrowing, but there is another side to the story, household debt. And the mix between the two looks very different across countries. Let's have a look at the table. Take Italy. Its public debt is around 135% of GDP, one of the highest in the world. Yet Italian households carry only about 36% of GDP in debt. In other words, the state is highly leveraged, but individual families are relatively conservative. In Japan, the pattern is similar, but even more extreme. Japanese government debt is around 236% of GDP, the highest among major economies, while household debt is around 64%. Once again, it is the government, not the people, that shoulders most of the debt. Germany is more cautious on both the fronts. Public debt is around 64% of GDP and household debt around 50%, moderate levels compared to other peers. And then there is the Netherlands, a fascinating reverse case. Public debt is modest, around 46% of GDP, but household debt is extremely high, close to 94%. A strong mortgage culture means the private sector, not the state, carries much of the leverage. The big takeaway is that high government debt doesn't automatically mean highly indebted household. The balance between public and private debt depends on housing systems, welfare models, credit culture, and how each society chooses to finance its lifestyle and security. In a debt-free world, inequality initially shrinks. Everybody buys only what they can afford, but over time, only the rich can buy big assets outright. Wealth gap grows. Debt often helps the poor climb up the ladder. Without it, the ladder becomes shorter. Psychologically, societies become patient, conservative, risk-averse. People avoid big leaps, relationships become more stable, fewer money fights, fewer EMI stresses, but aspirations shrink. The paradox lies in a philosophical dimension, that whether we are happy with the natural pace of human lifestyle or life is in a fast lane funded by debt and fueled by compulsive behavior that never subsides. In reality, debt is the oxygen of today's global economy. It powers growth, innovation, and expansion. Yet, too much debt becomes dangerous, slowing growth, weakening currencies, raising inflation, and reducing fiscal flexibility. Where does borrowed money actually go? Let's have a look at it. When we talk about government borrowing, most people imagine that all of it goes towards paying interest or financing old loans. But the truth is, the world's top 10 economies use debt financing across several vital sectors that shape natural growth and public welfare. A major share goes in infrastructure and capital projects, highways, metros, ports, airports, power grids, and digital network. This is the backbone of economic expansion and long term competitiveness. Debt is also used to support social welfare schemes, pensions, food subsidies, unemployment benefits, education subsidies, and family support schemes. Aging societies like Japan, Italy, and France rely on borrowing to fund ballooning pension and healthcare expenses. Healthcare is another major area. Public hospitals, national insurances, pandemic response, vaccine logistics, and elder care systems. A significant portion also supports defense and national security, modernization of military forces, cyber defense, space capability, and strategic deterrence often require large deficit funded budgets. Countries borrow heavily to invest in education and human capital, universities, scholarships, research, student loan guarantees, and teacher training. Debt also drives energy transition and climate actions, renewable energy, EV infrastructure, climate adaptation, carbon reduction, and green hydrogen projects. Government further uses borrowings to support industries through subsidies and incentive schemes, such as semiconductor incentive, manufacturing, PLI, agriculture subsidies, and small business credit. And finally, debt becomes critical in crisis situations. During recessions, financial crises, pandemics, natural disasters, borrowing is what keeps economies from collapsing. If you check each category separately, I am sure that expenditure on most of them have increased substantially in the last 2 decades. The question still remains, how does the government manage the fine balancing act of prioritizing the sector where productive investment must be done and trim populist measures for political gains? We all have experienced that the conservative people manage their debts within their means, unless he is assured that the debt has a sound backing of servicing in the future. What are the lessons for individuals? The path is simple. One must prioritize high interest loans, avoid lifestyle debt, and track expenses and increase in income also. Imagining that spending driven by ambition, wellness, ego satisfaction, lifestyle, etc., are going to subside is purely utopian. Therefore, we must side with a prudent and safer behavior and choices. Therefore, debt is both a tool and a trap for us. Thank you very much.